if you want to just put yourself on mute, and whenever you want to speak, you can unmute
Yeah.
yourself.
Okay, cool.
Okay,
Sounds
great.
great.
Thanks, Howard.
Sure.
Wait, hold on 1 second. What do you want? Can you count to 10, Howard?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
All right, you're hired.
All right.
Get him? Okay. Yeah, right. Would you?
to another Utility Advisory Committee meeting. So I guess we will ask Josh to confirm the postings. Thank you. So Josh confirmed, gave me the thumbs up. And for roll call, we have Howard Anil on the telephone, Ned Shamu on here, myself, Larry Carr, Greg, Todd, and at this time we do not have, we're missing Andy Anderson. So we have a quorum, and I guess we can go then to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, then next we will go to the comment period, and this comment period is only related to items that are on the agenda for today. Was there anything emailed? Any other phone call? Okay, so we'll go, see nobody in the audience. We'll go straight to the phone. So if anybody's interested, it's 702-589-9629. And I'll give it just a minute or so, just to be on the safe side. Again, that number is 702-589-9629. Okay, not hearing any comments, then we will go to the agenda. We'll start with agenda item number 1. I think this is a pretty basic agenda, but just to be on the safe side, Joe, was there any need to rearrange the agenda for anything?
No, sir.
Okay, committee, was there any?
No.
Okay, so we'll just go down the list. Sorry. Howard,
Yes.
was there any agenda item, anything on the agenda that you wanted to rearrange?
No, I'm fine with it all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll start off with agenda number 1 for possible action approval of the May 3rd, 2003 Utility Advisory Committee minutes. Does anybody have any comments?
Just the changes that our vice chairperson has retired, and it was still noted in there she was just absent.
Okay. Anybody else?
No.
So I'll make a motion that with the changes to Eileen Wilkinson, that she was not a member in May 3rd, then we'll make a motion to approve the minutes. Any second?
Oh, go ahead, Doug.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, any opposed, say nay. See, Howard, did I hear?
Yes, aye.
I'm not sure I said aye either, so it passes unanimously. Okay, so then we will close that out and go to item number 2 for possible action, election of chairman and vice chairman of the Utility Advisory Committee.
Okay, so at this time, we'll need the committee to elect a chairman and a vice chairman to serve a one-year term for the Utility Advisory Committee by a nomination and majority vote.
I would like to nominate Larry Carr as the chairman of this committee.
So do we want to do that in a vote? do that first and then ask for the vice chairman, or do we want to do both?
You could do one at a time, that's fine.
Okay. So is there any other nominations? Okay, so then we'll do a vote for the chairman. For myself, Larry Carr. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So then next we need a vice chairman. So does anybody nominate or volunteer? Howard, would you be willing to take on the vice chair?
Oh, I would, Larry, but I'm out of town quite a bit, and I want to make sure I can fulfill that role properly. So I'd take the vice chairmanship.
Okay, yeah, so we'll be,
Realize, I'm going to probably be out of town many times, and I'll have to do things remotely, so.
well, I think we can work with that, and I think we can, as long as you and I've only missed one meetings the whole time I've been here, and I was on the phone for that, so, doesn't mean
Right.
things won't change, but, hopefully there won't
Right.
be any major issues, so. So unless I heard somebody else that would want to be vice chair, okay. So, all in favor of, Howard as vice chair, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you, Howard.
Yeah, thank you, Howard.
you.
Appreciate it.
Sure, thank you.
So then we'll go on, so we'll close out number 2, go to number 3, discussion and overview of the new Utility Advisory Committee Resolution number 7656. So Joe, do you want to lead this?
Sure, thank you, Chairman Carr. Item number 3, this is discussion and overview of the new Utility Advisory Committee Resolution, number 7656. So I just wanted to, thank the committee, congratulate all of you on the success of kind of getting through the revenue requirement for the rate adjustments. I think we really worked together to kind of do what's best for both the utility and the ratepayers. Kind of going over the resolution, the purpose of the Utility Advisory Committee is to advise the City Council on revenue requirements of the utility and recommend to the City Council rate adjustments. So that's the committee's stated purpose, and also that the number of committee members is 5. And the committee shall hold regular meetings, but not less regularly than every 3 months. So I'm happy to answer any questions if there's any about the new resolution and the committee's purpose moving forward.
I wanted to clarify, it sounds like the purpose of the committee is primarily to make recommendations regarding finance and rates and things like that. Any ability to comment on infrastructure and things that are going on in the utility itself physically?
Infrastructure within the utility would be a revenue requirement. So anything that the utility needs to, make revenue to sustain itself as a successful enterprise, I would say is a revenue requirement. And at that point, then it's, recommending to the City Council any necessary rate adjustments from that requirement.
Okay.
So to make sure, because you had mentioned that it was a revenue making, but in the infrastructure, it'd also be a revenue charge. So if we had to modify the infrastructure, that would be a revenue requirement still. It's not it doesn't generate revenue, but it would be a revenue, it would reduce the revenue.
Revenue requirement, right. So the revenue requirements of the utility are both the operation and maintenance, ongoing, and then as well as the capital.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment related to the new resolution?
Yeah, on a side note, I want to thank the contractor for completing the task of the conduit runs between Substation 3 back into the residential neighborhood. It looks very nice and very clean. And as an old construction guy, I really appreciated the fact that they also lowered the elevation outside of Substation 3 for the potential completion and starting of demolition and replacement of Substation 3. looks like we'll have a bigger footprint for ground to work with. So I want to just give a thank you to the contractor.
Great. Well, if there's no other questions and comments, we can move on to item number 4.
Just make sure. Howard, did you have any comments on number 3, the new resolution?
No, I mean, we're going to end up going to quarterly meetings. Is that correct too?
We're going to discuss that in number 5.
Okay. All right. I'll wait till then. I'm fine. I mean, yeah, I'm good with what we're doing.
Yeah, just so we're on, since we're on number 3 says no less than quarterly, so.
Right.
So
Okay.
we'll just talk about that in number 5. Okay, anybody? Okay, so we will, sorry. So we'll close out number 3 and go to number 4 for possible action, consideration of the reallocation of capital improvement funds from fiscal year 25 to fiscal year 24 for the perimeter fence and road design landfill project. Joe?
Right, thank you, Chairman Carr. For this action, possible action, so what we're requesting the Utility Advisory Committee to consider is the reallocating of funds for this particular project from FY25 to FY24. So if you recall from the rate study, we had about $1 million total for this particular project. So this is the grading of the perimeter road and fence and primarily the detention basin. So we have a phasing plan that has been approved. It's not permitted that we have to follow the phasing plan, but what we're trying to come up with is a sub-phasing plan that will get us, to where we need to be. The landfill, as you know, was expanded from 60 acres to 160 acres in 2017. So we've got, enough to work with to meet our needs. And part of that, to meet our regulatory requirements, is a detention basin to keep, a 500-year event from staying on the property and not washing landfill material off of the property. So staff's recommendation is to strategically look at a couple things. The transmission refurbishment project and electrical, that will actually be spent in the latter half of FY24. So that for cash flow purposes, that gives us some latitude. And what we're recommending with the strategy of going with the interlocal agreement with the Colorado River Commission is that we push the $2 million from substation 5, since it would be the third substation in the line. So substations 3, 4, and then 5, move that $2 million from the substation 5 project to FY27. What this will do is it gets us outside of the revenue requirement parameters and window that we set for the rates for FY24 to FY26. The reallocation of these funds will expedite the landfill's protective infrastructure build-out, particularly the detention basin. And so that $1 million that we've got won't get us the fence, but engineer cost estimate will get us the road and the detention basin, and that's what we want to pursue. So I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Really quick, is this a detention basin or a retention basin?
A detention basin.
So does it have to be lined to where it's got an impermeable surface in it, or is it allowed
No.
to percolate down into the soil?
It is allowed to percolate. Yeah, the landfill itself does not need to be lined.
Okay, well, that's why I was asking. The wording is very particular and specific.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
So Joe, you were saying, since I was looking at what was in the packet, and all that's in the packet is the $571,000. Was there $400,000 that was in the previous? Because I was just trying to remember now. Yes. So by not having all the data, it's hard to say.
There's a few projects that are very similar in scope. The total funding of all of those is around that dollar amount.
I guess I'm just trying to track it as all because we don't see it in the data that we had for this meeting. We do have to rely on past meetings. So that I guess we had $400,000 that was in a previous year. I can't remember if that was 23 or 22. That's been pulled forward, and so now we're saying that that amount plus this amount is for the fencing, the detention center, detention basin, and the road.
So we have existing funds that have been, from ongoing projects. One is the phasing plan, one is the perimeter road and fence design, and the other one is the landfill expansion.
Okay, but I think the detention, I don't remember hearing about the detention before, so it's just,
It's a new ruling, I think, by the state, but it's required to catch runoff water from the landfill and park it in a facility within the site grounds.
I
And
understand
because
it.
we also increased the landfill acreage, it's now become imperative that we do that.
Okay, no, not a problem, it's good. But I guess what I'm hearing is we're probably expecting additional money needed for more of the fence. Because if I thought I heard you correctly, that what the money we currently have and then what the money we're asking to move is not enough to finish all the projects.
Oh, absolutely. There's so the phasing plan, if we were to follow it exactly, it'd be about 25 years before we get to phase 2. So where the entire perimeter of the landfill is, fenced off and used. So the goal here is to have a sub-phasing plan that will strategically get us to that point where eventually the landfill is ultimately built out. So, we need the road, and we need the fence and the detention basin. And so what we're looking for right now with this funding option is we'll have enough to do the detention basin and the road.
Okay, so I realize that this is a very limited agenda item, and so we can't discuss a whole lot. But are you expecting more money in this 5-year plan, capital plan for landfill?
It would be outside of the current revenue requirement for this rate adjustment. So it would be, within the 5 years, but, starting in 27 and 28 is a possibility.
Okay, so that's so what we're looking at is, I guess we can talk a little bit about it in item 6, but right now, hopefully in November, we'd be able to talk about the full 5-year plan. Is that correct?
Sure.
Okay, and so that way we can understand, so things will be modified from what we have seen in the, what we got in the packet for this one. And then also then we'd understand moving since you, in the report, and since you mentioned the $2 million change, is that going to reduce 25 down in the electrical down from 7 to 5? Or is that going to be modified?
No, it will reduce.
Yeah, 2 million.
It will reduce electrical down.
Okay, and so that
By
will be
2
shown in a new, so by November, we should have a new tentative capital report, right, with showing 25 through 29?
Right. The tentative CIP plan, that my understanding is that occurs after the operation and maintenance budget calendar. But the idea is that we're going to, align the meetings to incorporate with that calendar. So we've got the FY24 CIP that was just approved in May. So the FY25 will be approved next May, the second meeting.
But what's happened in the past, and my understanding, the calendar doesn't show it, so I don't have it, is that we've asked the city council to tentatively approve the 1-year capital program in November or December.
Of this year, right? To do yep.
Correct. So
Yeah.
we would at least see 25, hopefully, in
Yep.
in November, in our meeting in November. So we're going to get to that, that's our next step. But I guess I'm just making sure that I understand. So some of the stuff that was in the report will be able to hopefully be discussed more in the November meeting.
Yeah, for the next meeting, we'll be discussing the CIP for all of 25, certainly.
Okay, it'd be nice to see the whole 5-year capital, so if we could see that. So I guess I'll bring that up in 6. So, now did you want a motion? Well, first off, is there any comments? Is there any comments on the?
Larry, I have a comment.
Sure.
Joe, I see that this is set up this detention basin and so forth is set up for a 500-year rain event. Is that a requirement of the permit, or how do we choose a 500-year flood or rain event?
Yes, I believe that's a requirement of the permit.
Okay, that's what I was thinking, because that seems like a pretty large detention, but if that's how they require it, so I was afraid that they were saying we had to do that, so. All right, that's my, comment on about that side, I think. That's all I have. Thank you.
I'm just curious about that a little bit. Is that taking advantage of an existing wash that you're just kind of widen and deepen and then build a berm at the end of it so that we don't have a lot of excavation that would have to be done to do this, I would imagine?
Right. So with the geographical contours of the area, the design would take advantage of the natural topography. So the areas where there is need to be cut and fill, that material would be used for the basin.
The berm, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. That's why I figured that, but that makes sense down there, yeah, sure.
But we won't have to take any dirt off-site because we'll be able to use that to
Yeah,
cover
for
the,
cover. Yeah,
for
that's what I
cover.
was thinking, for sure, yeah.
so that's the way it should be done.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Scrapers are us.
And just a little background information. I mean, we've since put in an operational fence, within the landfill to kind of get the working area. So as they expand into different acreage that expand out, they still have some space to go up the working face in elevation. So the idea is to try and maximize the footprint, as much as possible to minimize, from the operator's point of view, going as high as possible, because that is what really brings, the styrofoam, the wind-blown
The bags.
debris and
Or
bags kind of outside and gives us regulatory issues.
So are they able to generate enough cover fill out of their excavations that they do? We don't have to export any cover in there at all, I don't imagine.
I believe that to be correct with the
Okay.
design that's
would be
being
good.
proposed.
And I happen to know firsthand some extra soil that the city owns over there by the fire station and behind McDonald's.
Joe, what's the life expectancy of this landfill?
I believe it's over 150 years
Now it is.
now.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good enough.
Yeah, just so to remind you, if it helps, is that originally it was supposed to be lined, and then I think as we were getting close to filling it up with the current area we had, deemed that it had to be lined. Now that it's not a requirement to be lined, then I think we've extended it to, over 100 years. Before, like I said, to my knowledge, we were close to filling the area that we currently had, so that's nice. But the one aspect too, you mentioned that the fence, if I remember correctly, at one of the other meetings, you were talking with the temporary fence. Was there a problem with the fence near 11? Was that something that was being worked on, that it wasn't covering, that we were having debris or something go into I-11 or something?
There is no fence near I-11. There's
is
no
no
fence and no road that gets the perimeter of the entire 160 acres.
Okay, but is that, so I couldn't remember if that was a problem that was that had to be addressed, or is it not a problem?
So we've addressed that particular problem with a new fence around the middle of the property. That'll probably last another 15 years of operation, 10, 15 years, I'd say, for them to go into. And that was something that we did with the expansion project to cover those capital costs. So that we were facing regulatory issues from the health district on trash going beyond the perimeter of the landfill, and there's a permit requirement to keep the landfill tidy is the general terminology, and so it certainly wasn't tidy.
Okay, and then so that would be something later on too, is that as you're trying to figure out with the fencing, how long you're designing it to last, I'd assume. Since you're saying this current one's 15 years, then what you're doing, but that's for another time.
You talking about the life of the fence?
Yes, because you're saying you can expand the fence, because you've got it in phases, so you're looking at additional money for fence it probably within the next 5-year period. And I guess I was just wondering if there was if that's still part of a design criteria to see the life expectancy of the fence, or is it just one type of fence that you're looking at?
The design of the fence of the actual perimeter will probably be much more robust than the operational fence that we installed to meet the regulatory requirements.
Okay.
Because we'll want to probably look at the height of the fence to be a little bit taller than typical to try and catch trash from escaping the perimeter. Right now, the perimeter is not, the ultimate perimeter is not visible to, and seen because there is no road, there is no fence. So as we get the, that built out, we'll want to make sure that it's constructed and it lasts its intended design life.
Of course, okay. Thank you. Any other comments?
Nope.
So since it seems to be that's the main aspect of the thing, like I said, did you want a motion from us to advise to move it, or are you just advising us on this?
Yeah, I mean, this is
Move
going to
the
be
money.
brought to council at either the second meeting in August or the first meeting in September. So it's the committee's purpose to advise council on the revenue requirement. So, I mean, that's going to be up for the committee on how they want to advise council.
So I think for this purpose, I guess it would be, we agree with the city. From what I understand, we'll just make another comment before we start anything. So does the committee agree that this is something that should be moved from 25 to 24?
Yeah. no problem.
Yes.
And Howard?
Yes.
Okay, so being that there's no conflict or anything or concern, then does anybody want to make a motion to move the money for the landfill from 25 to 24?
I would make that motion that we move the money that is budgeted for the switches in 25.
No, actually, it's not the switches, it's the actual money in landfill. We're just- we're-
Okay, in
Yep,
landfill.
landfill money.
Okay. To 20, what year, 25?
For
24? Okay,
So I guess you want to sort of just redo that one more time?
yeah. Move that we move the money that has been budgeted in the landfill from where it's at now which is what, 25?
25.
To 24, year 24.
Okay, any comments on that? Or can I get a second for that?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, any comments? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Passes unanimously. Josh, was there any,
I got one quick one. So that will be an advisory motion or an advisor from the committee to city council saying that we've in step with the city's idea of moving the funds?
So your, the advisement and the motion, of the committee will be in the staff report.
Correct.
Yep.
As going to city council is, we are aware of it and we know what's going on with it.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
thank you.
Yep.
thank you. Okay, so I guess we will close out item number 4 and go to item number 5 for possible action. Discuss and determine the preferred quarterly meeting to schedule for the current fiscal year. Joe, do you want to just start this off?
Sure. So with the committee's kind of like purpose and recent success on really getting through the revenue requirement for the next 3 years and the rate adjustment, what we're looking at are quarterly meetings, with the next being in November, and then for next year, aligning the meetings with both the operation and maintenance budget approval and the capital improvement project approval. So for the rest of this calendar year, we would look at a meeting in November, and then in 2024, we would look at meeting in January, April, July, and October. And then that would align with both the operation maintenance budget approval process and the capital improvement plan process.
Any comments by the committee?
Joe, what were the dates in 2024, the suggested months?
So be the first Wednesday of the month, and the months would be January, April, July, and October.
Okay, thank you.
Greg?
Oh, I'm just trying to get my head around it. So the dates in January, April, and October of '24 will coincide with the budgetary analysis for FY '25.
That's correct.
Okay. If that'll work, then that would be fine with me.
Well, actually, that's not, just
That's what I was looking for, is that piece of
make
paper.
sure it's clarification, because January through April is for 25, July and October would be for 26. Once April's done, once July hits, 25 is over.
Right.
So you're looking at 2 meetings for 25 and 2 meetings for 26.
Well, we got the meeting for 25 in November, and then we had another,
January.
and then we have another in January and April, so there's 3 more for 25, and then we go into 26.
But just making sure July and October are not for 25, they would be 26. That's
Yes.
the thing we just want to be careful is you are looking, most of this, part of this is looking at calendar year, and we also have the fiscal year. So I just want to keep the fiscal year. We're basically, the city's on fiscal year.
Yep.
And so we have 25. I would like to suggest to look at least 6, or at least have a placeholder for 6 meetings minimum. Because the resolution says minimally quarterly. So I think if we run into anything for the budget, we've got 1 month really to discuss the budget, that's it. Because as of last year, we didn't really have any information in January. Very little, if any.
Yeah, January was dark.
And so if we meet in January, or in the previous years, we didn't have any, very little information. So, I think it'll line up with the budget. You need at least 2 meetings, if not 3, between February and May to sort of understand what's going on. Because part of the revenue requirement, if I remember correctly, we should have a update for the water. I'm not sure exactly when that comes in, but the water for SNWA, the cost, I think that comes in January, but we might not see it in the January meeting because it's probably, I'm not sure. We have we'll have a new budget for the power. Last year it was in March to get an idea. And so if we put everything in April, then that's 1 meeting to do a report or something to advise committee. So my understanding is if we do what's normally happens, you'll have a meeting in March that, with the city council as a starting budget.
Would be a workshop?
Yeah, and then it'd be nice, I guess, to get some information around that time. So even if we could just sort of get a tentative meeting. So what does the rest of the committee think about that?
I personally feel, I'm here at the end of the table, that we need a calendar showing what our goals are, when they have to be met, and then we figure meetings backing that up. Because you're correct, I was just looking at my past stuff. If we're gonna do like we're talking about in '24, we're gonna need the proposal is a January, April, October, and I'd say a November meeting in '24. Because we've got to get budget numbers out to the city council to be able to vote upon and have recommendations. And I think we've got to take, and I propose as the member that we get through this year, fiscal year, calendar year, I should say, check that, calendar year of '23, we get through that, we'll have the meeting in November, and then in that meeting, we should be able to discuss with the lineup of the milestones that we have to hit. We should be able to line up our meetings for the 2024 calendar year, not the fiscal year, but that'll come with the budgetary things that we have to do. This is going to really throw a lot of pressure on us to get done in every meeting every quarter in '24. It's going to really have a lot of pressure on us. We're not going to be sitting here for an hour to an hour and a half every meeting. I think we're going to have to be 2-hour meetings for that to get this all done. And then we've got to have in our agenda items, the agenda items have to reflect what we're going to be discussing in the quarterly meetings in 2024. And it's got to be pretty absolute. So I don't have a city calendar as to when our milestones have to be hit by having advice from the advisory committee to give to city council. What are our deadlines? Because I know we had a we had a joint workshop this last year, with city council, and I don't see anything on the docket for that.
Maybe the idea of setting it for quarterly, but leave it with an option to go to 6 meetings if we have to, something like that. What if
Yeah.
it's warranted?
We've got that. In fact, in the resolution, special meetings may be held on the call of the chairman, 3 committee members, the city manager, or may be requested by a majority of the city council.
Howard?
Yeah, I agree with what Greg was talking about. We need to make this mesh with the, because we had a lot of input, I think, over the last few years. And so without knowing without seeing that agenda, I think if we are fed information about the budget so we can, call for our special meeting, our extra meetings. I think that's important. So I align myself with what Greg was saying.
I go along with that also. I think we'll know more in November, and if I'm hearing Greg right, I think we might need to change instead of July and October, it might need to be August and November again. It's a little bit long, or you have one in June maybe. That's where, again, six meetings might be better than 4, because in July, I'm not sure there's that much information. And in October, you definitely won't have the information you need for the SIP. So if we go from October all the way to January again, then I don't see how we can have all the information to advise the council.
Yeah, keep in mind that the committee was successful in a 3-year revenue requirement for rate adjustments that covered fiscal years 24 through 26. So from my point of view, as far as on operational and maintenance budget as well as in capital improvement plan, that's what the revenue requirement is, unless the committee has a desire to make any additional rate adjustments within that period. So then that advice would be made to council on behalf of the committee. But, from my perspective, we've been successful. We've, achieved what we set out to achieve for 3 fiscal years. And so we've got our roadmap in order to meet what that revenue requirement is, because that's what we've said it is in the model and assigned the rate to be. And that's what council, voted on and approved in the most recent rate resolutions.
So what I'm hearing you say is you've already got a crystal ball that you can forecast what 3 years of revenue and expenses are going to be for the next 3 years, and we're never going to have to look at the rate adjustment in that 3-year period.
Most certainly not. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we've been successful in revenue requirement plan for 3 fiscal years. We've done a number of things on the risk profile. We've unbundled the energy. So if the energy costs were to rise, that's going to be automatic. That's going to happen. We've got the SNWA wholesale delivery costs. If that goes up, that cost is also passed on. So the revenue requirement, within a 3-year period, we have a framework of what we can spend operationally, what we need, and we've got a capital improvement plan for those 3 years.
Well, I kind of agree, but I disagree, because before you came on board, we were fighting with our advisory company that we had for rates, and that wound up being very tenacious for the members that are here today. And you were not here at that time, and I just don't feel comfortable saying that we're locked in and we've got it done for 3 years, because I know for a fact one thing that's really sticking in my craw is the water rates for the B rate waters, and we're not going to talk about it for 3 years. I just can't see doing that.
And I think that's the thing, is that, so if we have meetings, and I think what we're all trying to say is we agree that we want to stay within a certain, within the guidelines of the resolution. The revenue requirement is actually pretty broad. And so we're just trying to get an understanding of what's happening during the year. And if things are happening, there's 2 things. First off, to make sure what is going to go forward. So the admin cost changed from when we saw it in May to when it was finalized. So for 24, it was changed. So we did not have any advisement aspect on that. We know that it's been suggested that that's changed again, and I'm not sure it's in the revenue. So just the admin fund is something that would be nice to discuss. So whether we can discuss that in January or not, that I'm not sure. Most likely, it'd be nice to sort of just start discussing the general variables in November. Would be nice to have a general idea of what we would expect after January. But I think that would be another aspect, is that yes, once we get a better idea of what's happening, have a new calendar, because to my knowledge, there's not even a new calendar on the website to say what's happening in '24. All there is the existing '23. Am I missing something? I could not find it on the website. So we don't even know. I think that's part of we don't even know what the calendar is that was stated. So to say that, to lock in the meetings dates without knowing what's going on and what our obligation is a little bit early. So if we say that we want to, I think if you're in agreement, it would be nice to at least sort of plan out 6 meetings for this fiscal year. And that way we're all volunteers up here. It'd be nice to schedule our vacations out in the future. So we'd have somewhat of an idea. You would have an idea about what your vacations are. And then instead of saying, okay, the month before, we'd ask for a special meeting. I think that sort of pushes things up a little harder than if we say, let's put in a placeholder. And then also I've seen before, it's like, then we have our normal meeting time and it doesn't get taken away. Go ahead, Greg.
I just thought about something. Do we, as the Utility Advisory Committee, have the wherewithal or means to vacate our meetings if we don't need them?
Not to my knowledge, no. The resolution states that the Utility Advisory Committee shall hold regular meetings, but not less regularly than every 3 months.
So in other words, we can't vacate a meeting date by the resolution, but what about city charter? Can a committee vacate a meeting? I thought we could, because back 3 or 4 years ago, we had to vacate a meeting during COVID.
Yeah, we can have someone from the city clerk's office come and answer that question, but the way I understand the resolution as written is that the committee needs to hold regular meetings and not less regularly than every 3 months.
Correct. But if let's say, for example, that we put in a meeting on February or March. Okay, so if we have a meeting in January and we put a meeting in February or March, and then we get to January and we say, okay, we don't need the meeting in February and March. We can change that date then. We've been doing it ever since we started. The city has canceled meetings left and right for the utility committee. So I'm misunderstanding.
Yeah, with 24 hours notice before Joe Stubik.
Yeah, I'm misunderstanding this comment. So maybe we can let the city clerk explain what our.
Good afternoon.
Yeah. Hey, Tammy.
I don't really know what your question is. I wasn't in here. I apologize.
Are we, as a Utility Advisory Committee, allowed to vacate meeting dates and times?
As a board, if you don't want to meet on a date that's suggested to meet, if the body decides, yes, that they don't want to meet, absolutely. But the resolution does state that you have to meet at least once every quarter.
Right, and that's, we're asking to meet more than that. And so what we're trying to do is just get some additional meetings earmarked. And so then if we come up to it, for instance, right now, it's looking at January and April, and then the next one with January, April, and July. And with the budget period being around the April period, I think it would be advantageous to have at least one extra meeting somewhere between January and May, besides just April. So if we put in a place mark, then we normally have our meeting, then I think what we're trying to do is then we would say we would know at the meeting before the next meeting if that meeting is needed or not. So maybe am I understanding you,
No,
Greg?
but The problem I'm having is we have, as an advisory group, to advise city council on certain voting questions or procedures, and we're trying to make sure that we can get the information to them in a timely manner to where we don't miss a deadline or something like that. Because a calendar has not been created for the calendar year FY '24, the year '24, at least it's not on the website, is it?
No, I mean, we don't have on the website as far as a calendar for UAC meetings.
Or what about city council meetings? And what their deadlines and what they have to report or what they have to
Well,
vote upon?
yeah, city council meetings are set. The city council meetings are the second and fourth Tuesdays of each month, with the exception of the second meeting in July and the second meeting in December are vacated.
Correct, right. And then the thing is we're trying to, as a committee, we're trying to figure out when we have to have our reports in to be put into the, I guess it's paperwork of city council to be able to vote on it.
Well, Utilities Director Joe Stubich should be able to come up with a schedule.
Okay,
So
and then
you're saying-
it will go to you as the city clerk and it will be then posted? Or how does that work? In other words, how
Are
do we?
you asking if the agendas are posted or a calendar schedule is posted?
Calendar schedule.
No.
Okay,
No,
because
we
I'm
post-
trying to figure out.
For
if
all
we're-
of our utility advisory, all of our committee members, we have a monthly calendar, but we don't schedule it out a year in advance.
Okay, so in other words, if we're having a mandatory meeting required a minimum of every 3 months, every quarter, and we have something we have to give a report to city council upon or on, how do we schedule our time and when we can do that and when we can put that on our agenda to discuss for city council report?
So I've given you guys a recommended calendar. That was the dates I mentioned, with the next meeting being November, and then for the calendar year '24 meetings in January, April, July, and October.
Are those hard dates, or could we move those dates?
Well, as I read the resolution, the committee shall hold regular meetings, but not less regularly than every 3 months.
But I understand that, but what I'm saying is to me, my gut is telling me you're trying to abolish the Utility Advisory Committee by having us fail by building in a calendar schedule that we cannot meet our opinion or the needs of city council advisement. That's what that's what I'm getting at.
But
Most
do you have
certainly not.
something specifically, because you do have guidelines of what the council's requesting, your recommendations, and so that has to coincide with how the budget works.
Right, and I
But
agree with
you're-
that, but I don't see it. I can't, it's not tangible to me.
The budget manager is here, Angela
Yeah.
Manning, to discuss the,
The new budget
budget.
manager.
yes.
So the dates that Joe presented do reflect the budget timeline. I know it's not up yet for next fiscal year, but the timeline by the state is always the same. So April 15th, I have to submit the tentative budget, which isn't the absolute budget, it's just, this is what we may do. So that first meeting in April is before even the tentative budget. And then it's towards the end of May where I need to submit the final budget. So if you guys did meet in April, you'd have plenty of time to discuss that budget. And also with his timeline with the capital improvement, usually we don't ask for tentative approval until the end of December. And we just always want the CIP before the operational budget in case CIP has operational costs in it. So the timeline Joe gave you does work with the council's deadlines too.
Mr. Chairman?
I think part of what we're saying is I still think another additional meeting between January and April would be helpful. As we come in January and there's not much information available, we would be able to discuss more before April. Because April is when you're asking, if I understand correctly, you're asking the council to approve it. If they approve it in April, then there's not an additional meeting.
I guess my answer to that would be is your recommendation and your review is based upon when staff can provide that information to you.
Correct.
So you want to meet in January, it may be that staff doesn't have that information that you need to even review at that point.
We're not
So it
asking
should
for
kind of-
January, staff is asking for January.
I'm just
I
giving an
think that's part
example.
of what we're asking about is January. If we get everything dropped in and it's on January, how are we going to make a decision for April? That's what we're asking right now.
Well, I go back to what we discussed, and that's that we've come up with a plan, you know, a 3-year plan. And let's build on our success. Rate resolutions were passed for a 3-year period, for a revenue requirement, for a plan, for a model that we spent several months on as a committee and as staff and as a consultant, you know, developing. So the rates are based on that model.
But
So.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And that includes both revenue requirements of operation and maintenance and capital. So if we want to deviate from that plan, then I'm suggesting that that's something that we can do. And then, you know, that advice can be given to council. But my intention is to stick with the plan that we came up with. Is that clear, or?
That part is clear. I guess I would agree with Greg that I don't think I've seen a budget that has stayed constant for 3 years. So to say that we're not going to change, I think what I'm asking for, and I'll ask the rest of the committee, we're asking just so we can review. And if there is any changes, then we can advise the council. But if in January there's nothing to review, and then everything comes up in April to review, there's a lot of data to review before we go. So we're just asking to review the budget. That is revenue requirement. That's all we're asking for. So we're not asking for it to change it or anything. We're asking for revenue requirement.
Right, and I'll repeat myself again, you know, to state that we've come up with a plan, and in that plan, you know, there's parameters, right? You know, there's a certain amount of escalation factor for each budget line item. Now, I'm not planning on raising it to the max of each for operation and maintenance, but I know what that limit is. So I know what, you know, my parameters are for each individual line item, and then thus the total. Also have the capital improvement plan set. So, and that's how the rates were established. So what's kind of like befuddling to me is if we deviate from that plan, then we'll have to change the rates. So if that's what the committee is suggesting, then
The committee is not suggesting to deviate. That's not, we're just asking for information. And we don't believe that in 4 meetings per fiscal year or calendar year, because that's quarterly, you're gonna have 4 meetings, that all the information would be necessarily available to us.
I guess the short answer would be, yes, you could definitely meet more often than quarterly if there is something to review.
And all we're doing is
But
asking that.
it is a tight schedule, I'll say. I mean, we know as staff, it is a tight schedule for everyone. It's a tight schedule for staff. It's a tight schedule for you, for city council. That is how it works.
I understand. And all I'm asking for is if we could have in a little bit of advance, instead of just January and April, maybe put another 1 or 2 in before July at least, so we have an understanding, and we can everybody can plan their vacation. So we don't come up in January, or we call in. I'm not sure if we were to say in January that if between, we don't say anything in January and something is decided to need a meeting between April, how do we do that? Because we can't meet as a committee.
Well, there's some leeway there that basically if we say, hey, we need another meeting, we can't just say, okay, we'll meet, you know, schedule a meeting 2 weeks ahead that we just, another meeting. Is that forbidden?
well, it says right here in the resolution, special meetings may be held on the call of the chairman, 3 committee members, the city manager, or may be requested by a majority of the city council.
So that,
Well,
So I came in late, so is the bottom line, you're saying that there's a meeting scheduled in January, and you think maybe there won't be a quorum to meet in January?
No. We're, right now, so what we've got is it's being suggested that there's a meeting in November, and I think we all agree with that. That's not a problem. And then we have a meeting for January, April, July, and October is what the next the 4 meetings in the calendar year of '24 are suggested to be. And we're just saying, can we put placeholders in for additional meetings in case there's additional data that we could review?
Well,
if we
honestly,
need-
yeah, what you would do though is you wouldn't put necessarily placeholders in. When you come to that meeting in January, and if you feel that is not sufficient time for you to review whatever it is you have before you, then yes, you can request an additional meeting. You have that right as the chairman to
that
request.
should work.
We could start in February, but then that puts us, in May. So like the four quarter schedule would be the 4 month, the 4 quarter schedule with those months in particular would be, that would be the minimum for us to get, in my mind, what we need to get done. So if there's a different arrangement of that, I'm open to hear it.
I think you said that best. That is the minimum. So when it comes time, if you feel that you need more time and need to come together as a body for a recommendation, then yes, you absolutely can suggest another meeting.
I think that works.
Well, most of it's just a matter of everybody's schedule, because in the past, it's like it's been a little bit of jockeying of what other committees are having it. So that was the only thing, is if we have it as a earmarked, then we don't have to worry about, okay, another committee has taken it. Because there was a few times in the past, we got bumped, and then we got bumped, and then we needed to get another meeting. I think we had to wait a full month because we couldn't fit it into that month.
I know the times that you're talking about, but that's when you were meeting at all, like, at different times. It wasn't.
No, there was a few times we got bumped in, because we've been doing this for about 2 years at least now, in the beginning of Wednesday. I have to go back, but so it's been in the last year or two. So again,
But we're
not
not
trying to argue.
always the time.
We're just trying to understand. And
We're trying to figure out what our input is to city council, if it's gonna be timely in the fact that they can get it and read it and digest it.
Yeah, I hear what you're
That's
saying,
what
and
I'm trying to do,
absolutely,
Tammy. I'm
but
just
to
trying to
earmark,
get
to
my head
earmark it
around
at this time, though, without knowing,
Yeah.
I wouldn't advise earmarking a specific time, because you don't know where you're gonna be at that
So
time.
do the next meeting on a quarterly basis. In other words, we have one in we'll say January or February, then we'd say we're gonna call the next meeting for 3 months after that, or whatever it needs to be.
I thought there was another meeting before January.
There's one in November.
Yeah.
Yeah, but is there gonna be any data available to us as a committee in November for the next budget cycle that the city council has to vote upon?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, you're going to get the entire fiscal year 25 capital improvement to
capital
review.
improvement.
And that's, I know staff did a lot of work. He did a lot of work working with the finance department so that you do have that data.
Okay, good.
But to have a meeting in October, no, that data is not going to be available. But yes, it will be available for your November meeting.
Okay. Yeah, that's the kind of
Yeah.
stuff I'm asking for, because like you say, you've got a schedule you have to hit on a daily basis here. As retirees, wink, wink, we have schedules we have to meet in our personal life to clear our calendar for the meetings.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, like I've told my missus, figure 3 hours. That's, if I go to the advisory meeting, it's 3 hours. Just figure 3 hours. Don't even argue about it. That's the way it is. So if we get it shorter, it's a blessing. If we have to go longer, that's something that's explainable.
But the dates that were selected, and I thought I read that in the staff report, it explained why those particular months were,
Did not get it in the packet.
Yeah, there was no dates.
There was no understanding as to why these months were selected and to what we're supposed to hit in the packet. And I
So-
read the whole packet.
The months were selected to meet the schedule for both the capital improvement as well as the operation and maintenance budget approval process.
But you gotta understand, that's a schedule that you have access to. We do not. Okay, in other words, all you gotta do is say, the reason this meeting is being called is because in this date and time, we need to have a CIP done. That's all I'm asking for. In other words, now I know what I'm having to work on and what I've gotta allocate my personal time to, because we're all volunteers, and that's what I'm asking about. If you were to come over to the house, my office is the garage, I've got a 4-foot wall of binders and books with UAC meeting notes and minutes, long before this committee was even designed or started. You know me, Tammy, I was sitting at council meetings long before I was a committee member, taking notes. And they're all in paper, so if the computer accidentally crashes or a backup drive crashes, I've got it in paper, chronologically. That's how I keep my books. But to be told I'm gonna have a meeting and there's no discussion about, no idea of what it's gonna be discussed, I've got no way to prepare for the meeting.
Well, we can definitely do better than that. I thought it was included in, but those dates were selected based upon when information will be ready.
As of 2 o'clock this afternoon, it is now evidence.
But-
2:01.
Yeah, I think right now, because a good example is, so November we know will work. January, I guess, is a good time to get an understanding of what's coming forward with the budget, but to my knowledge, there won't be a lot of budget information at that time. April is the major date. That's the major time that everything's gonna happen. There should be if I'm looking at the old calendar, then there's a budget meeting in March. So we would be able to get that information from the council meeting, I suppose. So we would have to review that and would help us for the April meeting. But in July 3rd is would be the next committee meeting. And I sort of doubt people want to meet on July 3rd.
No.
So I guess the question was initially asked, can they vacate a meeting even though the resolution states committee shall hold regular meetings but not less regularly than every 3 months? That was the initial
But
question.
vacating is different. So are you asking, can you go longer than a 3-month period?
That's what the committee was asking,
No, we're
yes.
saying if we call for an extra meeting and we want
Yeah,
to
I didn't hear it
cancel
that
the
way.
extra meeting, as long as we don't extend past the 90-day interval, we're fine.
Well, if
Say
you're
we
just
wanna have-
suggesting a meeting, so say you get to your January meeting and you decide, wow, we need another meeting before our next quarterly meeting. Yes, you would just suggest that then to
Correct.
Mr. Stubitz, and we would schedule that.
Okay, that's what we're trying to
Yes.
ask. In other words,
But you wouldn't have to vacate because the meeting wouldn't take place unless we posted it in accordance with open meeting law.
correct.
Yes.
But I want to make certain that the legal parameters are met by us, the committee members, as to understanding what we're trying to do and meet our
Yes,
requirements.
yeah. Vacating is only if you're not going to meet on a regularly scheduled meeting.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, nobody intended to do less than the quarterly.
Yeah, we're just
So that-
surprised that we're getting a summer recess. 3-month intervals, we're getting a summer recess, so now we have to relearn for the next meeting what we got to talk about.
I know. I mean, honestly, though, what you've been tasked to do, the summer recess makes sense. You wouldn't meet with nothing to actually review
Exactly.
and make a
Well,
decision.
we have some stuff that was in the past that was never settled, and that can be brought up as our topic of discussion. But the thing is, that'll now take a back burner to what we have that's in front of us that we have to get done as a deadline.
And what the council's asking for,
Right.
yes.
So that's why I'm trying to get it to where I've got to redo my 2-year out calendar of all my meeting dates and times, and I'm gonna have to reshuffle everything. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, we definitely took a lot longer than we intended to do, because all we were trying to do was add. We weren't trying to subtract, we were just trying to add a few extra
Got it,
meetings.
yes.
But
Yeah, when the
thanks.
time comes, if you need additional meetings, absolutely. It's just, we're not going to earmark certain.
Additional meetings.
Additional meetings in January when we can't forecast where we're going to be as staff to
Correct.
be able to have that information to you.
Okay, well, the only thing then different is that in July, let's just look at that now. So it depends if we want to earmark all these now, or do we just say, well, as of January? Because are you going to set July and October in the calendar or not?
Well, I had suggested those dates, to meet both the operation and maintenance and capital improvement plan calendars.
Those are
So-
important milestones.
So after April, the 90-day period, the 3-month period would be July.
Is
So
there
that,
any leeway on that 90-day period? And can't you put a plus or minus 30 days or something like that in there?
well, we could look to change the resolution.
No,
It'd
it's-
have to go
no,
back to
no,
council.
No, it's, okay, so the way you read it, I guess,
Recess?
okay, so then since we're going from what we used to, from 12 down to 4, and we're just trying to understand, we can understand there doesn't need to be a meeting, or it causes issues to meet every
like we
month.
need a recess.
We understand that. And so now we're trying to just get ourselves,
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
so we're just trying to get ourselves to understand, and that's why it's taking longer. We're just trying to understand. We're not trying to do anything. So, but if we're looking at, like I said, just flags come up when you look at July 3rd as being the meeting date. That's the first Wednesday of July. That's right, the day before 4th of July.
Well, that's something we can consider. So if you're saying as a body that July is problematic to meet, because of vacations or whatever, we'll definitely take that into consideration.
I would think it'd
Yeah.
be problematic for the city too, the day right before a holiday. So I'm looking at everybody. I'm trying to be as polite as I can on this, and I'm not trying to do it. But I guess the thing is then maybe we would meet in June. We also have 4 members are up in June of this year. So then July makes sense because we don't know who is all coming back, who's going to be appointed. We most likely will have some new people, if not a lot. So do you meet in July? Do you meet in August? How do we do it? Do we meet in June and have a little information before the final appointment? These are things that is. So maybe January is a way. So if you want to put a placeholder and you just go down the line, because that's what it looks like to me in the calendar, January, April, July, October. Because in July, there really isn't any new information. We've hardly ever talked about it. We usually don't have a meeting in July. We've missed more July meetings than we have any other month every time we've met. So July doesn't necessarily make sense. So I think maybe it is we'll meet in November, and then in January we meet, and then we discuss how to do it. If we need a placeholder to make sure that we meet every 90 days, and then July, if you want to put July, but I think it's probably going to be June or August, something like that.
Yeah, and that's not a problem. It's far enough out.
So we're just,
Yeah, so
that's all we're
you're-
trying to do. We just got confused on boundaries. And so we called you in because it was just confusion on if we added extra, I think what the whole thing was, and I'll repeat what was just said earlier, if we add an extra meeting, can we vacate that meeting?
Yeah, so if you asked for an extra meeting, you would only vacate if you've posted and made it public to everyone that you were going to meet on a specific day. Otherwise, you wouldn't vacate it. If you just decide that there's no business and you don't need to meet on an extra day that you just talked about maybe meeting, it wouldn't be vacating because it's never been posted.
Okay, it was just, I think, again, maybe our terminology was misunderstood. We misunderstood and presented it
But
incorrectly.
you're right, if July is problematic and that works out, that happens to be that quarterly schedule, no problem, we can work with that.
So I
And
think-
again, like you said, we don't want you to have a meeting if there really is no business to discuss.
No, that's understandable. It's just a matter of, okay, so, but no, we're not trying to change anything. We're just trying to understand the data. And in most cases, I've seen in the March meeting for the budget, there's almost 1,000 pages worth of data. And so to say that we've got to go over it, the council, but actually the council they have 2 meetings, March and April, to go over that. We would have 1 meeting to go over that. So I guess if we took all the time ourselves in March to do that, but we can't communicate. So that's sort of what we're looking at, is just, so maybe in January, when we look at some of the data, maybe we can understand it better, what might need to be done.
Absolutely.
So that's the thing, when you're going from 12 months down to 4 months, we don't know what we're missing exactly. So that's what we were just trying to understand was.
Well, I think the difference too of the 4 months versus 12 months is that they have specific goals that they're asking, certain specific recommendations they're looking for. And so that's why staff worked to have it coincide with when we can actually provide that data to you, so
Okay.
that you can provide the recommendation to the council.
Any additional?
Sounds good to me.
Howard?
Yes.
Any additional comments?
No, I'm agreeing with the discussion. I mean, I think you guys are presenting things that I had, exactly what I had on my mind, and I'm with you. I'm right behind you guys. So that's all I had to add.
Yeah, so I don't know if you want to if you need to put a schedule out for, because basically I would assume you'd only need to put a schedule out for the fiscal year. Because that's, if we need to make sure that we're meeting properly, we would go through April. And then that would take us, we have this meeting November, January, and April. So for this fiscal year, that would meet our obligation. And then in January.
Yes, but again, it's just minimum of 3 months. So come January, when the information's provided to you, at that time, if you feel you don't have sufficient time and you want to meet before that next 3-month period, you absolutely can request that.
Okay, I was
Yeah.
just, so, maybe I'll put it, maybe I'm confusing the issue again, and I apologize. So, are you asking us to vote on all of the dates that you suggested, or what do you want us to do? What are you asking us to do?
That wasn't an action item, was it?
Yeah, it is a for possible action, discuss and determine the preferred quarterly meeting schedule for the current fiscal year. So it's for the remainder of this fiscal year.
So, but do you want us to vote, or what do you want us to do?
Well, it's going to be reflected in the minutes, so if I'm hearing you right, then you're suggesting that there be opportunity to meet more than once a quarter on an as-needed basis, and I'm also hearing that July would be a normal meeting, and to find a different date, month in July, either have it at June or August.
I would be my suggestion.
Yes.
I don't think the city or the committee would really prefer that month.
Yeah, so I've heard your comments, and it'll all be reflected in the minutes.
Yep, you're good.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good, thanks.
And thank you for volunteering. We do appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam City Clerk.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, so,
Okay, so then I guess with that, if I'm understanding then, Joe, then we just close that, so it'll be, our comments will be reflected in the minutes?
Yes, sir.
Go forward with that, okay.
okay.
Any other comments on that, Howard?
No, I don't have anything additional.
Okay, so if nothing else, anybody, then we will close item number 4.
No,
Oh, no, excuse me, item number 5, thank you. Thank you for keeping me straight. And we'll go to item number 6, which is just discuss potential agenda items related to revenue requirements of the utility for upcoming meetings. So I'll open it up. Did you have anything, Joe, to start with? Or-
Well, to start for the next meeting in November will be the FY25 CIP, since we just talked about one particular item within the capital of 25. And that's what I've got.
Can we have
Is
the,
that, Joe, you're saying that it's FY25 CIP is what we'll discuss?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
can we request to see the whole, the full 5-year, the 25 through 29?
Sure.
Okay.
You want that in November's meeting?
Yes, yes. So I'd like, if the agenda can state the 25 through 29, so we can discuss all 5 years, that would be helpful. Again, we're not asking to change anything, we'd just like to see it.
You know, again, the council, so I'll go back to the purpose of the committee. The purpose of the committee is to advise the city council on the revenue requirement and make rate adjustments. The city council is going to be voting on the CIP for FY25.
This is one thing that it's trying to understand it completely, is because you talk about a 5-year CIP. I realize, and in the city council, the 5-year package is presented to the city council. They're only asking to vote on it. All I'm asking for is to be.
Current year, right.
Correct. All I'm asking is to have the same courtesy to be able to see the full package and be able to discuss it. I don't know, I can't remember if the city council discusses the 5-year package. I would think they would be allowed to, because right now what we have is we're looking, just like this staff report, you talked about moving things around. Well, you're moving things outside of 25. So just by able to understand where it's being moved to and what the new revenue requirements are is just a courtesy for us to see what's going on.
Certainly, yes, you can have that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so then are we still allowed to have the discussion of possible agenda items in the future? Or is that a one-time thing, or can we keep that on the agenda?
Yeah, that could be kept on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay. So I'm going to open it up to the committee before I make a few comments. What is, for future agenda, is there anything for November 1st? November, discuss that we'd like to see on the agenda?
As long as we can include that, the 2 items we just asked for, the CIP for 25 and then the 5-year plan, that's what I want. So I'm good.
Okay. Anything,
Sounds good to me.
Greg?
Mr. Director, this CIP from FY25, is that the one we've worked on for the past couple of years as the 5-year CIP program?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so in other words, there'll be some stuff moved around, but basically if we go back into 2 years ago budget, we'll see it in there as to what the line items were.
Yeah, so the only change will be, depending on if council, makes the budget augmentation based on the committee's advisement will be the change that we discussed earlier in the meeting.
Okay, and because I would like to see really quickly if there's been any capital improvement projects scheduled for closure. In other words, it's been done and the money's been spent and everything else. I haven't heard one of those reports in a couple meetings. So, in other words, will that reflect that as just a raw data?
It's going to be similar to what you see in your packet today. It's not, the plan is not to talk about the ongoing or the existing CIP
So we've
projects.
eliminated that topic in our items of discussion.
No, sir, no.
It's put in the packet, but not for oral discussion.
No. The topics that we've discussed, the 5-year and the FY25, would be separate. Are you, from the
Right,
ongoing?
but we
so-
aren't going to get any updates on capital improvement projects like we used to get in the past meetings.
All that information is
Is-
publicly available.
That's what I'm
to-
saying,
to
and
all
so it's
citizens.
publicly available, but we're not going to discuss it at the dais and podium.
Is that an agenda item that you would like to have on the agenda?
No, I'm just making certain that it's not being deleted from any of the Utility Advisory Committee meeting notes or docket packets.
No,
It's in
sir,
there.
it is not being deleted.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know, I would like to have what's being closed out and the status of all the projects. I think that's a simple table or something on that is presented and an opportunity to discuss is what I think we need to do. I'd like to see that on the agenda myself.
Yeah, we can have the CIP coordinator, come and present that.
That'd be good.
Okay, so the question is, if we're meeting quarterly, so on a quarterly, would we expect that on a quarterly meeting, or is that something you'd only want to do twice a year or something? What is that your preference? Or
My preference is quarterly.
can the city, is that okay with, can the city support that?
I don't see a problem with that.
Okay, so basically, I think just to make it clear, what we're asking for is you have information, to my knowledge, is that in ClearGov that the closeout, or is it only in the manager's report that information is presented to the public?
Right now, my understanding is that the closeout's being reported in the city manager's report.
Okay, yeah, and it's not, so what we have had in the past is a little bit more of an explanation than, or a little more of an explanation than the city managers has. Is that doable?
I'm not exactly sure exactly what you're requesting.
Okay,
Larry, what I'd like to see is percent completion of a project. What's the status? 0%, 25%, 80%, have that. And then if it's closing out, what the expected final numbers are going to be. That's where I'd like to see.
Well, all those numbers and material are publicly posted on the website currently.
whereabouts on the website?
The exact web address, do you know, Josh, the exact? Okay, we're pulling it up right now to give
Okay,
it
so
to
that,
to have it
is that being
reflected in the
updated?
minutes.
Okay, so that's the, what was that? That was the tablet, that was created about a year ago or so?
Yeah, it was
is
a
that- but is-
Tableau project
Okay.
dashboard.
So is that being updated monthly, or?
Yes.
Okay, so then we would need to look at that ourselves then. So, could you, resend a link out to everybody just to make sure the committee members have it?
Yes.
Okay, then that would be, because I don't know that that's obvious on the, website. When I've looked lately, Joe, I don't think it's a link, is it? I'm not sure there's an actual link there yet, just so we're on the same page.
So the is bcnv.org. Oh, well, it's a long link, so I'll just email it out to you and post it in the minutes.
Okay,
But it's under, if you go to the bcnv.org website and go to government, and it's under utilities, department infrastructure.
okay, so it is, okay, I just didn't see it clearly, so, thank you. Okay, so that would be nice then, that would be, so I guess in November then, could we add that to the November agenda?
I'm sorry, what
I guess
exactly
we'd
did
be
you
looking
want
at
added?
just the ongoing, so maybe that's what we can do is do an ongoing capital, and then you can tell us what's feasible in November to present, and we can go from there.
Yes, so I've got the fiscal year 25 CIP, the 5-year capital improvement plan, and the ongoing CIP.
Okay,
And that's from the standpoint of what's been closed, what's been completed financially?
okay, that would be. And then, so then, of course, and then still with the discuss the potential agenda items at the very end, right? Okay. So do you want us to go over future items now, or you prefer us to talk about that in November for what we'd like to see in January and
Yeah, I think we're good.
just do that in November?
Yes.
Okay.
That's gonna consume some time, the CIP stuff.
No, I'm not saying anything more for November. I'm just saying if would they want a heads up for January and stuff, but I guess would see then you'll have a better idea for January yourself, what you're gonna put out, so. The one thing I just want to get, I guess, on the thing is I would like to talk about the admin fund a little more as we go through. So if we could discuss that in the future. So, I guess that would probably be a January aspect.
Yeah, that'd be a January topic.
Yep.
So just to give you a heads up, that would be, there is some, because I believe that one is I don't believe it was put into the actual rate process. It was just a suggestion. So that is something that would be something to advise the council on, I believe.
Certainly.
So the sooner we can discuss it, it'd be better if we need to do it. Okay, any other, so that'll be for just, I guess, the agenda items. We'll discuss more of the agenda items in November. Any other comments? Howard? Anything else before I close out?
Howard?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, then, so okay.
I have nothing.
Okay, then we'll close out number 6, and we will go to the last public comment, which can be discussed, things related to the utility, committee related to utilities, but not necessarily what was on the agenda. Again, we didn't have anything in phone or anything.
Can I call in a thing real quick? Joe, I want to thank the crew for getting the power back on. Okay, during that last heat wave and the outages. Did we have a final or somewhat of an analysis or idea what it was? Because I'm being asked at the CUP as to what happened. Was it transformers that failed? Pole tops and underground?
Yeah, I mean, we could I don't know if this is the place to
Well, it's an open
this for
discussion. It's open for this, and
for
I'm
public
just
comment?
calling as a citizen real quick.
Yeah, I think, we had several equipment failures, transformers, cable.
Okay, well, the reason I'm asking, because, I'm at the CUP several times a week, and I get
Sure.
people asking me all the time, is why it took so long to restore.
Yeah.
And I says it's underground, it's hard to trace and hard to track, so be patient.
I'd come in and talk to folks in there and talk to them about that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll just give, so if anybody wants to call in, it's 702-589-9629. Get just about a minute.
Speaking of those outages, I remember every year when the first hot days come, all the weak points in the system that have been sitting there waiting to pop, that's when it all happens. And then you get over the first couple of hot days and the rest of the summer usually goes pretty well. But there's always something going wrong.
Okay, well, hearing no comments, we will close out the meeting today, and we will, so our next meeting is November, what is that, November, what's the exact date on that, do we have?
It's November 1st.
November 1st at 1, and we're still doing 1 o'clock, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we'll see everybody at 1 o'clock on November 1st. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good.
Take care, guys.